That's an awfully big question.
Make sure he's uncomfortable at the start.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me down. I mean, it's been, it's been a lot of fun, and I mean, we'll get into the things that I do, but well, first of all, I'm a filmmaker, right? I'm a filmmaker biologist. I spend my time in the wilderness hunting and fishing and telling stories, and I happen to work with a tremendous crew of guys that make everything that I do digestible and beautiful, and hopefully translates to a lot of people that either have questions or want to celebrate the same things that we want to celebrate. And so translating that into Sorinex, which I didn't even know what you guys did when we did our first podcast, just walking through the headquarters, and seeing all of the weight equipment from, probably the early 19th century, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, turn of the 19th century. Yeah, 1819.
So seeing all that stuff, late 1800s, early 1900s, you can just see the story there. And then obviously meeting Bert's dad and seeing, what was obvious, his passion, his office transgression into telling that story of building his own equipment because he couldn't afford to buy his own. And probably stuff was so rude back then that really your imagination led to whatever you wanted to train.
Wasn't safe enough, strong enough, all the, just as a construction, just as you've seen, or like your career in filmmaking, you didn't like the films that were being made.
Yeah.
So you made your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's cool. It was cool, man. It was cool to come in, see the story, and meet you guys. And I really do appreciate it. I don't ever take this stuff for granted. And meeting new people is always really fun for me. I just love to hear everyone else's story. And
is that how you approach, when you're talking to people? I pointed this out on the last podcast, but I feel like you're looking at the world through a different set of lenses than I get with most people. And I think that's partially because you are a storyteller, but I also think it goes back to your hunting awareness. Your situational awareness, especially in the conditions that you hunt in near the Arctic Circle, Alaska, Idaho, as we were saying. You have to be on your best to be aware of what's going on, and are there bears? Is there some kind of predator? And I think when you started talking back to me, I was shocked. Because usually when someone that I look at with certain status, or maybe we'll call it hashtag celebrity,
that is so dumb.
It is, but just for understanding, it's like you were curious of who I was.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's something that's very much lost. But coming in here and getting to share this time with you and really see how your wheels turn, man, it's been awesome. And I'm so glad that you're here. When you're talking to these people, what is your story? Like, what do you want them to hear about you? What do you want them to know? As we were just talking before this, you got these guys that come up to you, I want my son to see a man like you in this world. How much does that weigh on you, and what is your story? What are you writing right now?
I mean, it weighs on me a lot, and I never anticipated going down this road. I'm a guy that I have always suffered with self-confidence issues. I've never felt like I was the best at anything, never felt like I excelled at anything, never felt like I was in the spotlight for anything, and I never wanted to be, but I've always wanted to be better, right? I would daydream about being smarter, literally daydream about, what it must be like to roll out math equations, no problem. When I was in high school, I wondered what it was like to be the guys or guys or girls or whatever that were just rolling out advanced algebra, no problem. And so I was always wondering about guys that played on the football team that were super talented, or guys like we'd go in the weight room and I remember there was this kid that I went to high school with. His name was Tontrell Jackson, this African-American kid. And we'd all be working out. And, I remember I'm pushing up 135 and trying to not let it cut me in half. And I remember he would put 225 on, and he would just keep pushing it up while he was talking to someone else, because he was just doing it because the coaches wanted him to do it, and he'd be having a conversation with someone else as he was pushing up. And this is in 10th grade, so he's just a beast. But I was always kind of curious about the other side, and I think, at least it feels this way, that everyone kind of feels this way, right? I think even if you're
reality is that, yeah.
I think so. And even if you're a superstar, you wonder about, I just heard an interview. This doesn't exactly translate to what you're asking, but I just heard an interview from a guy named Ricky Carmichael, He's the best in the world to ever race motocross. Best, hands down, the best in the world. And I just saw an interview with him, and he feels vulnerable in life because the only thing he's ever been good at is motocross. So to him, he's like, you know, there are a lot of people that are good at other things, but he'd only been good at this. And so I was like, holy cow, how does this guy that's been paid?
Even being the best at
that. And I mean, the best, like 10 times better than anyone. And so I'd always went through that as I was coming up. And then, but wildlife and hunting, not even so much hunting, wildlife and going on adventures and spending time in the wilderness and seeing grizzly bears and moose and doll sheep and wolves, it was all I ever wanted to do. And so I didn't really know why or what. And obviously I wanted to go on these big hunts, but I didn't really garner the connection until I went there. Once I went there, once I started to see the animals and the weather, like you were talking about, and the bears and the wolves, and I started to actually experience these things and feeling hungry and being lost and having to cross a river that I had to kind of problem solve to get across, or climb a mountain, or address my fear of heights, or whatever it may be. Like once I started to do these things, it really started to speak to me. You know, people like to use the word soul, but that's what it really was for me. I was looking, it was very easy for me to start asking questions of myself and asking questions of my environment. I started just really analyzing what was important to me and what I cared about. And the first few times I was around wildlife, I cared so deeply for them, even though I was hunting them. Like just being really close to them spoke to me in a manner that, to be honest with you, for years and years and years, I just kept to myself because I'd be around other hunters and they'd say, oh yeah, you know, did you see a bear? And, oh yeah. And I would just keep the conversation level because I was nervous that they weren't going to get what I was feeling. And I was nervous that I was going to be lost in translation.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to ask, because, you know, I think a lot of people have to detach, you know, like they can't accept that this animal, not that it's alive, but just
kind of,
they have to kind of detach from the fact that they're killing something. Like that's a harsh word, right? I think we've all felt that moment of not regret, but just like, it's like, it's heavy. It's a heavy moment.
Part of it that's not, it's the weird paradox, and I'd love to hear your in depth on it, but yeah, you put this time and money and preparation and pain and all this to go after this pursuit. And then when it happens, there isn't always pure elation, even if it's this enormous trophy or something great that you're just like, oh my gosh, like, but there's still a part of, there's always that reverence and respect that, yeah, you were a chapter in that animal's life, really the last chapter.
Yeah, you're responsible.
Yeah, you're
responsible,
extremely responsible. Yeah. And how do you mitigate that? How do you what's the balance sheet in your mind? How does that work, and in your heart? I've experienced it. I don't know how to necessarily define that.
It's tricky.
But to point out this, it's like we are part of this cycle. No matter if you're pulling the trigger or letting the release go, we have a responsibility and an ownership to these animals. Right?
Well, I mean, and it's really heavy. And if you even want to take it further, human beings, if you're looking at us as a species, and this is not a very nice thought, and it's too big of a thought for what we're talking about here, but us as a species, us as a collective group of animals on the face of the earth, we're having the most impact over anything else that any other species of wildlife. I mean, we are making our presence felt, and you know, you back that off to hunting or an engagement of that manner, and it's still very, very heavy. But we have a huge responsibility being the animals that we are, and most of us, myself included. I mean, first of all, we are the highest level of hypocrites, right? We human beings live amongst a hypocrisy that is so rich and deep in layers that it's hardly any of us could stand on a leg for any argument whatsoever. And that's, if you have any perspective of being a human being, you can't stand on a soapbox for anything. And so we do this with little arguments, and we try to say the things that we stand for and the things that are important to us.
Substantiate our own, pretty much our own emotions.
That's it, man. And you're just literally, it's little pieces here and there, and you just have to, I think you just have to keep trying to be a better human being, a better steward of the land, a better husband, father, friend, kind stranger. Like, the better you can be, the lighter you can tread, the more smiles you can bring to other individuals, the better you can leave a place than you found it. That's your ride. That's the only thing you can hang your hat on. Everything else is, a T-shirt. You know what I mean, or a bumper sticker.
Yeah, I mean, I look at you two guys, and you've done some Western hunts. I've never done a Western hunt. You've done some Arctic hunts. I've never done that. So for me,
saying that we're in the same category is very
well.
It's like saying we're in the same. But that's
you're
category.
Getting to my point, though.
Real quick to substantiate and give a backstory.
Yeah.
Give some bullet points of maybe some of the hunts and durations and locations. Well, because when you say that, Brandon, I get what you're saying, but putting some depth behind that.
Well, I like staying places for a long time, right? And that's something that few people do. Most people would go on a hunt for 7, 8, 9, 10 days, and I like staying for 20, 30 days, something like that. And so just getting as far off the beaten path as I can go, and seeing things that are uncommon to see, and sometimes I'll say experiencing fantastic things by putting myself in fantastic places, and that's really the difference, right?
Well, that's one of Bert's sayings, just run it down.
Extraordinary experiences are generally brought to by extraordinary people and interacting.
Oh, right on.
So it's that, and that's kind of my goal in life, is to create and experience as many of those extraordinary experiences as possible. Generally, extraordinary people are the key to that.
All right.
So it's interesting that you feel a similar way.
Yeah.
So excluding the whitetail.
Yes.
We'll go with that.
What's my favorite?
Yeah. No, I mean, I've seen your 3 films. And by the way, we'll run those down at the end of this. And you guys, if you have, I even said it on Instagram the other day, if you're not a hunter and you've hated hunting your whole life, I think these are worth watching, because you don't present hunting as this, trophy type situation. It's it's the films are about you and the struggle with that and the ongoing with that. I don't want to give too much away about the documentaries, but let's just talk about the caribou. Okay. That was just a fantastic, beautifully filmed hunt, as well as the terrain, right? It's just that there's no place like it on earth.
Yep.
And I mean, is that what you live for, that caribou hunt, or is there something else that fires you up more?
I mean, there's definitely a few, if I were to pick a collection, obviously I love, like we discussed this morning, love hunting whitetail deer, right? Love, to me, animals trigger different feelings to me, different responses, and other people feel this too. But if I start thinking about whitetails, and we obviously get to hunt whitetails September, October, November, December, but I don't ever think about whitetails in September, October, November, December. I think about whitetails in November, and I think about a clear blue sky day, or maybe an overcast rainy day, and if it's cold, crispy leaves. I just think about I have these certain trigger points, how the sun comes up, how it goes down, geese flying overhead,
what
honking.
The smells are, the decayed leaves.
Exactly. And so things like this, these are the things that kind of speak to me. And so, when you mention caribou, I have another collection of stimulants that kind of flood into my mind. And I think about migrating bulls, and I saw it yesterday when we were shooting that caribou target. You see those white manes from miles away. And then you'll see me go like this, because you'll see, like, they always start out with a matriarchal cow. Then it'll be a few calves, cows, and small bulls, younger bulls, all the way up to the last, 2, 3, 4 in the herd will be the old boys. And so you just see them, and they just walk like this, and their antlers just swinging. It's so cool, because you get to see, you're looking miles away, and you really feel how you should feel as a human for once, right? It's kind of like being in New York City, but you're not. You're sitting on the tundra. I can see however far a human being can see in certain conditions. And I'm looking, there's a grizzly bear over here eating berries. There's a pack of wolves over here that's hunting, and I can see herds of caribou coming. And so, it's cold, and I'm trying to balance storms and my gear and my food and fresh water and fire, and I have to get down here and get in a position and get in a stalking position for this herd, stay out of the way of the first 50 animals that I have no interest in, and kill one of these older class bulls that are in the back. And then I was telling you guys yesterday, and then once, I see my arrow disappear behind his front shoulder, I see him take 2 more steps, stumble, stand there, and tip over, and I don't want to over anthropomorphize this, but I don't really see the suffering, if you will. You can see some really tragic endings in nature, both with human beings,
Sure.
and with wild animals. And so you see this animal tip over in almost as graceful a position as they can be in death, and go over there and, I appreciate and accept what just went down, accept the responsibility for the role that I just played, and take out my knife and start breaking the animal down. And I was telling you yesterday, there's something about having, it's barbaric to think about, but it's very much a value to human beings. We are all hunters and gatherers. This is, as a society of animals, this is how we have perpetuated in life. We started out before the advent of agriculture and corn and rice. We traveled the world looking for wild resources and hunting. And so, I feel this crusted blood on my hands, days in and pulling that hide off. You can, you pull that hide off and you lay it next to the animal on the tundra, and you can kind of feel that weight, like you might feel the leather on a couch or the leather on a chair or a jacket or a piece of clothing, and you start to, I start to kind of feel like, well, this might be what it must have been like for the Native Americans to build a wall of their teepee, to stretch us out of a buffalo hide or to make a bedroll. And so you lay this down and you're fleshing this out, and you see the meat gets really dark red and gets this crust on it. It's very cold. You can almost stop feeling your fingers a little bit because they get so cold, and it starts to snow, and you're breaking this animal down and putting it in a pack. And all of these things, it sounds like you just killed a caribou, but really all of this leads up to me and how this is what caribou hunting means to me, and this is how I feel the most human, is by entering these relationships of predator and prey and being by myself or being with a small group of people that appreciate it. And unfortunately, I get to film this and share it with people. Unfortunately, I'm sharing this with the cameras, which cheapens the values a little tiny bit, because it's that's where my hypocrisy lands. Is I'm on social media, which I hate. I'm on Facebook, which I hate. I make money selling films, which I hate. I wish I could, and I could. Again, that's me being a hypocrite. I wish I could just write a novel and people would buy it and read it, but they wouldn't. Or maybe they would, but not enough. And I enjoy being in these places, and the fact that I can share it with people and talk about it means the world to me. And then if you take that and ask about a moose or a grizzly bear or a black bear, they a whole new set of circumstances enters my mind of the hunt, but it all ends with skinning that animal, feeling that heavy hide and the blood on my hands, and back in the teepee or the tent that I'm in, and I'm cooking chunks of meat for dinner, and the northern lights are out, and I mean, I'm very far removed from what it means to be a human being right now, but that's when I feel the most like a human.
Do you feel any?
Absolutely.
Do you feel any burden coming back home from that? Like almost a dread to return? Because you did something really kind of, probably you didn't even catch it. Maybe you did. I hope you did. You were saying we, and then you caught yourself and you say I.
Oh.
So I wonder, are you starting to socially detach more and more? Because this was a practice. Jay Ferrugia, actually, and Mike DeSanti, two guys that have been big players in my life, they call me on it. They're like, don't generalize yourself. You are you. Your decisions are you. So is it just something from that effect, or do you want to go further into the wilderness, right? You want to keep going further and further.
Yeah,
so are you just trying to be so present that you know every intention that you have, or you just...
I definitely celebrate the presence, right? That is something that's very important to me. And the I and we might be as simple as me toggling between I used to do this alone, and now I'm never alone. Right now I have my crew, which I'm extremely thankful for. They're stupidly talented, and they would literally follow me into anything. I think I told you on the podcast the other day that if I could text William Altman right now and say, hey, next week we have to go to the Galapagos Islands and someone wants us to film swimming outside of cages holding onto the dorsal fin of a great white, they want us to shoot the perspective over the nose of the great white, he would literally text me back and say, what days? It wouldn't even strike him to say, well, that's super dangerous. What are we going to do? He would literally say, where's my flight information? Right. And that could be the we and the I a little bit, but
it's interesting. Real quick, a friend of ours was Gunnar Peterson.
Yeah,
he's one of those guys that talks about that same response mechanism for some of his close friends, and one of them being his brother. And he talks about if there's a text that comes through, it says, "Hey, Gunnar, would you like to go to someplace crazy in some short time period?" You one of those like the Great White type scenario. Yeah. And he was talking about the most respectful answer that you could give to someone you truly love is 2 letters, I-N.
Yeah.
You don't ask details.
Yeah.
In.
Yeah.
And then at that point, then you work out the details. Would you like to go Great White, this, that, in?
Yeah.
And then that's just I'm stamping the relationship right there. This is how we work together.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's figure out the logistics. Yeah. So that's really cool if you have people in your life.
And that's a really good brotherhood to have, or family or friends or whatever. And that's how I feel with my crew. Like I don't feel, we're just a tight knit group, awesome. in celebration. But to answer your question, I do sometimes, like when I come home, I do get. I mean, it's not that I'm detaching more and more, but you start to. I can't imagine what the military guys feel. I can't imagine the special forces guys how detached they feel. I'm sure they still feel very in sync with their friends and family, but I can't imagine the jobs that they just finished doing. I've talked to this with Evan quite a bit, Haffer, and I just wonder, about their detachments when they come home, because when I come home from something as simple as a wilderness hunt, I can see on people's faces and how they carry themselves that they don't really appreciate the food they're eating. They don't really appreciate the lack of exercise that they if they're not training, they don't appreciate that how efficient the human body is for them, even though they're not training. They don't understand that the harder they push, the better they're going to feel, because their bodies are so efficient at creating them to be lazy, right? Your body will make up.
You're lazy.
Right? Your body will make up the gaps that you're not doing as a human being. That's where our species has evolved into. But, there's little things that I celebrate when I come home too, like driving a car feels just crazy that I can go from point A to point B and I don't have to walk and carry all my stuff, And so there's things that I appreciate. But, when I come home, and then the other thing is when I get letters from people that are upset, or talk to people in bars, or whether I'm at a hunting show or in the grocery store, people start to kind of question what you do, and they have difficult questions, which I enjoy difficult questions, but they're asking questions as though I'm doing something wrong by taking this animal's life, and they're living a good life by buying meat that was raised to be killed, or worse yet, people that are, and I'm not going to harp on these folks, but when you're a vegetarian or a vegan, oftentimes there's a soapbox that's allegedly to stand on, and still, my point is, just like originally, is we have such a footprint as human beings. I don't care what your diet or ethics are. We have such an imprint on the earth that you can't stand on any one leg. You absolutely can. And so that stuff kind of bothers me sometimes, is when people, and I just talked to a guy the other day, really gifted writer friend of mine. He asked me, I have a big hunt coming up in the Yukon this year, and he said, "Are you taking a bow or a gun?" And I said, "I honestly don't know which one yet." And he said, "Well, if I have my opinion, I'd really like for you to take a bow, because guns are so sensitive right now." And I said to him, and I hope this doesn't come out wrong, but I said, and I said this very simply and very high schoolish, so I hope it doesn't come across poorly, but I said, mass shootings suck. Gun accidents in homes with children or spouses or friends suck. Gang shootings suck. All criminals suck. But aside from those categories, everything about guns should be celebrated. Mm-hmm. Everything in it, particularly if you're an American. Right. We're sitting here on this fancy chairs and this table and all this crap, no offense, because guys like that are picking up machine guns and sticking their heads out of holes in walls and affording us some protection. And so, like, when he says that to me, I understand the crap that's in the news right now.
Right.
And I understand there's places in South Chicago you don't want to go right now. And I understand that somebody today or tomorrow or the next day is going to be cleaning a gun and there's going to be an accident. I understand all of that stuff, but they also come with a tremendous peak of value. Tremendous.
You said we wouldn't have not only the country we have, we wouldn't have a country.
Yeah.
Without really proficiency in firearms.
Yeah, absolutely. And so all of that stuff, right? So I'm always kind of taking everything, but I also know that more often than not, I'm wrong. So when people are coming to me with their opinions, I'm all ears. Or when I meet somebody on a bus and they want to tell me about themselves, or more importantly, I want to know about them, I'm all ears. I want to know what your philosophies are. I want to to me, everything is gray. Nothing's black and white. So whether you're creating hate or creating love or celebrating something or condemning something, you have to kind of have that mind that's open to listen and appreciate all of those different avenues, right? Yeah. So you might be missing something otherwise. Yeah. And information in the world is changing so quickly that, if you're closing your minds off to variables, you're very likely going to be a victim or you're not going to have lived your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bert, you're talking about, like, I know you 1-to-1, and I know that you're into this idea of building a tribe, family, culture.
Sure.
But also growing a business that is built on tribe, family, and culture. So I think personally we strive for that tribe, which is kind of a buzzword now, but props to Sebastian Younger for a pretty great book. It's you have this tribe concept. So as a personal level, how does that transfer for you guys into business? Because if nobody's watching your films, if nobody's checking out what you're doing, then what? And there is no business. There is no opportunity to do these great things. Same for you. I mean, I'm very curious because you guys are similar on the spectrum, and then you're also different because I
have hair in the front, he has hair in the back.
And I got a cul-de-sac.
We have party in the front and the back. Yeah. Yeah, Bert, you go first.
We've talked about it before. Like, I've always wanted to have a group of friends of like-minded people that maybe not even like-minded, but like-spirited, meaning a little bit what Donnie said. We don't have to agree as long as we respect one another and have good conversations that maybe you tell me your point of view, maybe it changes me or mine changes you, but the commonality is that we're willing to listen and we're willing to respect each other and love each other regardless. So having a group of people, and I think we have the Sorinex Bosco Brotherhood or whatever, and I don't like to plug Sorinex in there, but that's most of my life. Like my life and Sorinex are somewhat interchangeable.
It's your last name.
Well, that's part of it. Yeah. But some people say, "Well, you get your business and you got your life." It's like, well, I get paid every once in a while for my life. It seems like, which is cool. That being said, I think that's where we've kind of brought together this eclectic group of people. Although maybe their vocation or their religious or gender or whatever, their different attributes may be different. Some of the commonalities, I think, of the tribe are mutual respect, willingness to do the hard work to create extraordinary experiences for themselves or others, willingness to, in some ways, get over themselves. Those are the things that I hold dear and try to either glean from others to make me better, that maybe I could pass it on to the next person. Or just if I could see that quality in people, maybe pull those people together so they could help one another. I would say that's kind of the tribe mentality of it that happens to be in my life, but also happens to be in my business. And what does that have to do with strength and weightlifting equipment? I don't know.
Right.
Like, I don't know. We sell lifting equipment. We're good at it. And I think it's really good stuff. But that's just a symptom of what we've tried to, over the years make. Like Donnie, for instance, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Donnie Vincent as the brand and what you were doing, what I saw on the screen and what I saw, through our favorite social media outlets. I liked where your mindset was, and I liked that side of it. Serendipitously, you ran into Brandon on a bus.
Yeah.
You know, a month or two later, you're hanging out down here with us, and we're shooting bows and eating barbecue and listening to songs and having good talks. And in my opinion, that's life done on the best level. When you go into a relationship or go into a meeting with someone. I mean, when you guys landed, we literally sat in my office and go, all right, well, what do you want to do? Well, and we went, I don't know. Let's just go get to know each other.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I mean, that's all
and
that
I
needs
told
to
my
be
wife,
done.
I said, I'm a little nervous. She goes, why? I said, well, I think I like this dude and the people hopefully coming down with him, but I don't know where this is going to go, nor do I have a goal. So it's kind of fun because it's like I'm going to go walk out into the wilderness and just see what I see.
Yeah.
Which is rad.
Yeah.
And so that's what's been fun, because a day and a half later, you know, I really like you guys. We've really had a good time, I think.
Absolutely.
And that's the part of building that tribe, and whatever, you know, hopefully your DNA intersecting into our tribe, and
there's no question.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Hopefully, like one little drop of color into a bowl of water, it's going to change it ever so slightly. And hopefully after today, both of our lives are changed in one degree or another. And then hopefully that'll keep going back and forth in flux and just turn into something better and better and better, as long as it's valuable. I don't mean money wise, but valuable to the life force of what we believe in.
Well, you guys, your DNA is very much in line with everything. I mean, you guys celebrate movement. You celebrate strength. That's super important to me. And not as a mountain hunter, not as carrying a backpack, not as shooting a bow. None of that, just as being a human being. It's very difficult to create the conditions that we used to live in, right?
Sure.
It's very, very difficult to get. We used to be cold. Our immune systems used to respond to the extreme cold. We used to respond to the extreme heat, and not having doctors, and not having food provided to us all the time, and not having transportation. So all of that has gone away for the, unless you live in Papua New Guinea, all of that has gone away. So now we have to mimic that stuff with the equipment that you guys build. And to me, that is very celebrated. And to give
manufactured stressors.
Absolutely. Really? And to give you my half of if people didn't buy my films or didn't buy our films, I would be doing something else, whether I'd still be doing research biology or worked into a different role. But we build our films, and we started doing this right out of the gate. And I'm so thankful, Kyle Nicolite, our editor at Sick Manta, and our director. It's 100% because of him. It's not a little percentage. It's 100%. He knew who I was, because I would go in his office and talk like this to him, and through our friendship or through work that we had done, I would talk like this. And then right away, when we started creating films, I went down a rabbit hole instantly and tried to create something that was popular. And right away he's like, no.
Yeah.
I handed him a piece of paper, and he's like, oh, this is absolute garbage. This is, I've never even heard you talk like this.
Right.
We need to be vulnerable. And so to answer your question, we build the work for us. We build the work for essentially me, and for the ethics that we hold, and the story that we want to tell, and the reality of it, the authenticity. Whether things go really good or things go really bad, we want to talk about these places that we've been. We want to talk about the animals, the people, talk about the hunt, talk about why, and what we feel is important. And then we sell our films beyond that, but hopefully people buy them. But if they don't, like, we've made 3 films so far. Let's say our 4th one ends our career for whatever reason. We have 4 pieces that we can hang our hat on, right? Just like at Sorinex. Yeah. If everything ends today, you can be... When did you guys start? 1980?
1980, yeah.
Okay, so you're 28 years old.
38.
38. Just carry the 10. Just carry the 10. You get right up. If you carry the 10, you get to 38 almost instantly. And so 38 years. And in 38 years, I'll guarantee you, if it stopped today, that you can hang your hat on everything that you've done.
Yeah,
in 38
we know
years.
that there's a lasting footprint, and that's partly the goal, is how lasting of a positive footprint, like you said, can you make on this world. in the short time we're here, while making the smallest negative impact or footprint.
Absolutely. And so that's everything. And so for me, every piece of work that we put out, certainly the stuff we do personally, obviously we do commercial work, which this is going to sound like a spin, but we hang ourselves for our commercial work. Like if Sorinex hired us for something, or if Walmart hires us for something, or we bleed for that work as well. As much as the client will let us pour ourselves into that piece, we bleed for it, because it's way more fun to try to move the needle, to be a storyteller, to evoke emotion from human beings, and not to elicit a buying response, but to elicit an emotional response, which is really what we're trying to do. And so, each day at work for us, whether it be with stuff that I'm in or Sick Manta production work, each little piece that we touch, we just try to be at the very best we can, and try to leave it to where if everything ended today, we can hold our heads high.
Be happy about the body of work you've created.
Yeah.
What's your general engagement with people about your work? I mean, you said letters. That's big, because to me, it's a tangible thing. Somebody sits down or writes it out, sends it to you. Emails. What's your biggest go-to? I mean, social media is a great bond here. And I think all three of us can sit here and admit, at some level, it's benefited us greatly, and then at some level, it's taken something from us as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're right. It's both sides. I don't want to admit to the benefit, but we all know. I mean, that's why we're sitting here, right?
Sure.
You wouldn't have known who I was otherwise, and yeah, I mean, it's letters, a few letters, lots of emails, lots of social media responses, things like that, and then there's a lot of engagement with, some of the more memorable ones that I've had is when we've played our films in film festivals, not hunting film festivals, but film festivals,
right?
And sitting in a theater of 500 people, and 10 of them are hunters, and then playing the film, and then having the response from people, right? And we've done a couple of things. We did the thing with we did a fundraiser with Discovery Channel where we played this in front of a room of, I don't know, it's probably 150 people, but it was all the major players that buy sponsorships for Discovery Channel. So Toyota was there, Intel was there, massive companies were there. And so we played some films, and then I got up and spoke to the whole room, and it was just cool. These people that, don't leave LA or don't leave New York asking me questions like, are you kidding me? You were 5 yards from a wolf and it didn't eat you, and what did you do with this grizzly bear? And I ran at a grizzly bear a few years ago. I had a grizzly bear that was coming to my tent, and he was kind of jogging at me, and I ran at him, not to put myself in harm's way, but to give him my wind. So the wind was blowing from my left to my right. He was running straight at me. So I ran at him, but I quartered away from him because I wanted the wind to hit me.
Did he see you?
Oh, yeah. We were running at each other. Like I yelled at him. He was walking.
Have you seen The Revenant?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen that. He was walking.
Bears will kill you. They have memes about it.
He was walking up the hill at my teepee, and what I was worried about was I was going to leave, and then he was going to come and eat all my food.
Yeah.
Because then I'm in trouble. And not in trouble, but it would be difficult. Inconvenient. And so I just yelled at him. I said, "Hey, bear." And he popped up on his rear feet, and he's just looking at me, and he's just staring at me. He's inquisitive, big boar grizzly, just inquisitive looking. He's got his front paws folded down. And they do this thing when they fall, when they drop. It's just so cool. They're just sitting there staring. He just dropped, and it's just so heavy, just boom. And he dropped, boom, and just boom, 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 just started coming up the hill at me. Just not a charge, but just he was double timing it.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, man. And all it is, this is how I read it. He's curious of me and the possible food source.
Right.
So
now, if the wind was going this way, he didn't smell your food source.
No.
He just saw you and was thinking,
Yeah,
I'm very curious now.
I'm a predator. I'm in the Arctic. I don't see people generally. Something just moved at the top of the hill. It could be a caribou calf.
Yep.
So he starts running up the hill. Well, I need to give him some indication that I'm not a caribou calf. So I sprinted down to him, and as soon as my wind came across, we were probably 20 yards apart, and as soon as my wind hit him, he freaking turned inside out. But the point is, I told that story in New York, in Manhattan, to all the people from Discovery, and you could have heard, just jaws on the ground. have no, if I told that story in Alaska to the Professional Hunter Society guides, they'd just be like,
good move.
Why are you telling me this lame story?
Right.
Why the bear didn't attack you? You were in an airplane crash? Nothing was on fire? What's the point of this? Yeah, I did that Tuesday. But everyone in Manhattan was like, this is fantastic, and
You're
so
Crocodile Dundee for.
Yeah, kind of. But that's, that gives you some, storytelling and some reflection with the people and some engagement.
And what would have happened, in your opinion, just to stay on that story for a minute, what would have happened had you stayed in your tent, had the bear kept coming, potentially?
It would have been bad, in my opinion, because he wouldn't have ever really got my wind.
Until he was really close.
Too close. And then now if he gets my wind and we're this close, he now might go into fight or flight.
Right.
And he might trigger into fight, and then he's going to pounce on me, and it's going to be a gunfight, and one of us is going to get hurt or killed for sure. 100%.
Did you have a gun?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did you take the gun with you when you sprinted?
Yes.
Okay.
And this was actually the first time I ever hunted this area, ever with a gun. Usually I would just bring a bow, but when I started going up there with a crew, I started feeling responsible for their lives, because we had went up there 2 years earlier, Kyle, myself, and William, and I promised Kyle I was going to bring him a gun, and I didn't. And then I promised him that I was going to bring pepper spray, and I didn't.
Your word is really bond.
I do what I say I'm going to do. And then I said, Kyle, I've hunted this area 5 times, 6 times. I've seen tons of grizzly bear tracks, but I've never actually even seen a bear. Don't worry about it. I'll make it up to you. And we ended up seeing 19 grizzlies in 14 days and tons of close encounters. And we didn't get charged or anything, but we did run. There was this gorgeous sow, and she had 3 3-year-old cubs. So you have one bear. People overestimate the weights of bears, but we're up in the Arctic. She was probably 400, 500 pounds, a large bear. And then all of her cubs were probably 200 pounds, 180, 200. So you got
certainly big enough.
Oh yeah, it looks like you're looking at the showroom floor of an IKEA with a bunch of couches and ottomans that can eat you. And so, we ran into them one time at like 20 yards. And we're walking down this river, and there's all these, you're starting to put all these clues together. You're walking, you're like, oh, there's a fish head. There's a fish head that you see sometimes, and you're like, oh, it's rotten. It's been eaten weeks ago, and it's got maggots in it, But then there's a fish head where you're like, that was just on a fish. Like that used to be an entire fish.
That's
and
still
it's
wet
now,
from the river.
Yeah,
right
now that's just a fish head, but that was recently a fish, and you're like, oh, there's another one, and there's another one, and that one's still flopping. And you go around the corner, and you're like, oh, there's a family of bears.
Yeah.
And Kyle just goes, we're just walking, and he just goes, bear, just a bear. And he just turns around and just starts stiff-legging it away, just bear. And he starts walking, and I go, Kyle, stop. He's like, let's not give them something to go after. And he's not running, but he's just briskly removing himself from the situation. So I stopped him, and I just spoke to her. I'm like, hey, mama. And she just, they just, whoa. And the whole family takes off. And, they make good decisions, right? They're in the business of staying alive. It's this notion of fitness, not necessarily fitness like this, but it is the exact same thing. It's this idea of differential reproductive success. Her job, sole job, is to have sex and to produce cubs. That's what she wants to do. That's why she's here, is to create the population of grizzly bears. Mm-hmm. So the greatest fitness she can have as a mom is to round up her family and head to the hills. The worst possible decision she can make in that situation is to attack. That's going to put her and her family at risk. But sometimes things are so close, they go into that fight or flight, and they're
it's
not.
It's like if someone jumps at you out of a closet,
absolutely,
like 2 feet from you, you're going to swing.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. Is your body goes into a response that you're not even responsible for. This is something that happens subconsciously. So my goal was to stop Kyle, round him up, talk to her in a soft voice, give her nervous system.
Yep.
But we're as vulnerable gets, right? We're 3 guys. We have pocket knives and a bow. It's not going to end well. Probably nobody's going to die, but we're probably all going to need a toupee.
First aid kit's being brought out on that.
Oh, yeah.
How worried are you about these guys? Because a lot of time they're distracted by you, or their attention is on you. I mean, and like
the photographers.
Yeah. I mean, like your film guys,
Yeah.
and like we were talking about very fine hunter. I can't remember his name. I don't want to disrespect that, but he was sitting there and 145-pound bear.
Yeah.
Got him from behind, right?
Yep.
And this is a guy that knows and is dialed in.
Excellent hunter.
So,
tough, strong guy.
Is that something that weighs on you, or even comes as a thought in your head, or are you just so singularly focused at getting your job done that you trust that they're getting their job done as well?
Oh, 100%. I mean, we'll go into dangerous situations together with a plan and reevaluating the variables as they change, as they happen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when we're in the final throes of stalking an animal, dangerous or not, or we're around dangerous animals, like they're doing their job, I'm doing my job. If I turn around and they're not doing their job, I got charged by a black bear. This a long time ago. I got severely charged by a black bear. He didn't make contact, but I thought for sure, like, he is coming. And I was filming with a friend of mine, and I turned around and to ask him, like, did you see that? And he was running. And that was so uncool.
Yeah.
Like, we're in this together.
Yeah.
Now
Could the running have substantiated that charge more so?
Absolutely. I mean, completely. I mean, that bear could have run right past me and went and killed him, or could have killed me, or we could have been, like I say, in a gunfight. But, yeah, you got to trust these guys, right? And sticking together. And even moose, like I called in a bull moose one time, and Kyle's just sitting there, and he's like, hey, man, how close is he going to come? I'm like, he's going to come really close. And this thing is, I mean, he's 15, 16, 17, 1,800 pounds. He's 60 inches wide. And he came to like 7 feet. And we're in this room with a moose, and this thing is just sitting there, snot's running out of his nose, and he just, whoa, whoa. And he's just looking for his girlfriend, because I cow called him. So he's just sitting in our camp, and Kyle's laying on the ground, and he's just sitting there, and all of a sudden Kyle moved his shoe a little bit, and he's just like, just whipped his head down and staring at Kyle. I'm like, don't move, dude. Do not move. Because, again, we're so close. If we trigger that, if he thinks we're another bull or we're a bear or a wolf, because now our profile is not that of a moose. We're down low.
Now you're a
scary
predator.
things come from down low. The animals know when they're born, they know that scary things come from the bottom, and don't stick your face or your paws in dark holes. It's just not going to work out for you. And so I just didn't want, this moose to instantly trigger into there's a wolf right there.
Right. And then
charge, and then, yeah, him and I are.
Moose kill more people than any animal, right?
I mean,
that was the statistic I think I heard.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely don't kill more people than anyone. I don't know what. Actually, I think I just heard this somewhere that mosquitoes actually kill the most people through malaria.
Okay.
But I mean, up in Alaska, I mean, I don't know what would be the greatest fatalities as far as wildlife, but it would be either a cow moose or a black bear.
No, I think it's year to year now. I think it's a current thing. Just for hunted animals.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right on.
They're pretty aggressive.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, we're always balancing that, but that's the job, that's the game. Sure. and yeah, but it's really fun.
Well, you spoke of malaria. That's brought up another thought of mine, just to kind of change directions for a second. You're a biologist. Is that what you classify yourself as first and foremost, or a filmmaker?
I mean, certainly a filmmaker. I didn't practice long enough as a biologist to, hang my hat on that for sure. But I have an innate interest in everything wild.
So with that being said, I heard something, I think it was Andy Schultz, a podcast episode with Rogan, when he was talking about the ice melting.
Yes.
You've gone to the Arctic several times. How much have you seen this change and this regression? And also, what do you think about the fears of these long bedded viruses or things in the ice that are coming out? I actually got to listen at Berea College. We had an ice specialist, and he brought it in, and I guess they had gelled it somehow. So I mean, it's like 16, 17 feet tall.
Core sample.
Yeah. And you could just see the strata and all these different things. And it was fascinating. And he was the first person I heard say that. So when I heard it brought back up again, this was like 15 years later. I'm like, this is getting very real.
Oh, it's very real.
And it's like, what's your take on it? I mean, as a scientist, Yeah,
I don't know the science behind it, right? I don't know about these super bugs that might be in the ice, or a parasite or something that might
bubonic plague.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, for real.
That can come back, and he in that podcast he had referenced a antelope that lived in Siberia,
Yes.
in Russia. And once the Earth's temperature rose to a certain degree, a symbiotic bacteria that they had living in their gut now all of a sudden had the type of temperature it needed to get into a non-symbiotic population level and essentially, quote unquote, overnight killed the entire population.
Wow.
So as soon as everybody's body temperatures rose to a certain level, the bacteria were able to start doubling at a rate that the immune system couldn't handle and killed every single one in the population. And so they reference that we have millions, if not billions, of different species of bacteria in our gut that aren't even identified yet. And so who knows, should the Earth's temperature raise, our body temperatures raise, there could be something catastrophic. But, you know, with the ice melting, it's extremely real. Like I'm not going to tell you that I've walked past a glacier, the same glacier every year. I'm generally going to different locations, but I've seen photographs of places that I've been where the ice is receding considerably. And I know some people, I have people that I know that I would call friends or acquaintances. It drives me nuts. If there's one thing that I don't really enjoy, I don't like black and white arguments, and I don't like people that the ignorance, right? I don't like people that think that everything is just going to trend the way it is right now, and that everything, or that we are going to invent something to get us out of every bind, right? The Earth has experienced several mass extinctions over the history of time, and we will have others, and humans will fall prey to that, in my opinion, or victim, if you will, or happenstance, however you want to splay it out. But climate change is extremely real. And I have friends, like I say, that, you know, we'll walk out of a restaurant or something and it'll be, you know, freezing cold outside, and they'll say, oh yeah, global warming. Yeah, that's a thing. And yes, you're picking a part out of an evening, January evening in Wisconsin where it's negative 30. Yes, this doesn't feel very global warming-y, but I assure you big changes are coming, and it's I'm not going to say it's scary, because if you're afraid of that type of stuff, I mean, you're in for a scary place. You're in for a long life. Things get a whole lot scarier than that.
The thing that I thought really kind of brought it home for me was when he said, you know, we're not talking about this massive wave currently. It's 2 degrees. You know, they've just noticed this. We're 2 degrees above where we should be.
Or we're trending towards 2 degrees above.
Yes, give or take. Yeah. So let's just say it is 2 degrees, and it's like in the human body. If you wake up tomorrow with a 99.9 or a 100 flat temperature, how bad does that make you feel?
Sure.
You know, and we were talking about it last night, having this balance point, the same amount of hydration fluid in our bodies that the Earth does. What is it, 72%, something like that, give or take. So, like, there is this balance, and we're really kicking it off. I mean, it's scary shit for me as a person, but like as a scientist, is this throwing bells and whistles off? Oh yeah, I listened to that same podcast, and it was, I mean, I picked up some of this stuff when I was in school, picked up some of this stuff in casual reading, and it's very real and very scary, and the change is exponential. Every year we go by, the change is significant over the year before. We're not just saying, you know, over the next 10 years, it's 10% more, 10% more, 10% more. And in 10 years, there's 100% change. It's ramping up every single year. Yeah. So if we have a 10% change, then we're having a 12% change, then we're having a 17% change. And it's significant. I definitely encourage you to enjoy your life and to to celebrate every day. And it doesn't mean, you know, that you can't live without consequences, right? It doesn't mean that you should go and do things that are going to create more fossil fuels, or you should go and do street drugs, or you should go and steal from people, or just live a crazy life. But, you know, this is where I do think you need to live your life, but celebrate life with others, right? I do believe you need to be a better person in every category that we discussed in the beginning of this, and I think it will make you feel better, and your days will feel more present and celebrated, and hopefully make a positive change. But yes, if you can do something where you're diminishing your use of gasoline, or you are diminishing your use of you're not throwing as much food away, or you're reducing your carbon footprint by just being a better steward, a better human. Imagine if everyone did that. You know, that would slow that growth considerably. Well, that's really what brought you here, is attempting to be a better human, honestly, right?
For real, we did that podcast. I didn't even know what Sorinex was. I knew it was weightlifting stuff. I knew you were a trainer. You're giant human being. And when we met on the bus was actually cantered a little bit towards the side that you were on when we were on it. But
he does that so all the lunches roll through.
Yeah,
exactly.
But yeah, I mean, once we got off the phone, I've been wanting to pick up a string of kettlebells, and so we got off the phone, and I texted you and said, "Hey, do you guys have kettlebells?" And you chuckled, and that's when I started looking into Sorinex, like, oh, they sell everything. So, but yeah, this isn't me for vanity. This isn't for getting ready to go to the mountains. I'm not a train to hunt type guy. I want to train for my life. That's what I want. I want to feel strong. I'm 44 right now. I feel 20-ish, something like that. And
you look great. I mean, honestly, like,
I appreciate that.
You look. A lot of guys you see, especially in that outdoor world. I was at the Mountain Ops deal, the Total Archery Challenge.
Yep.
So, like, there's a 500 Rudies out there, like 500 Rudy Reyes guys that are just shredded, but they were also small. You're carrying some mass, so you train to build yourself up, right?
Quite a bit. Yep.
Yeah. So what's your training look like right now?
It's 2 or 3 days in weights, maybe a 45 minutes to an hour training session pushing weights, like general push pull, hitting all the categories, and then do a lot of yoga. Nick Swanson is our VP of operations at Sick Manta, and I do yoga with him.
Yeah.
We go to core power yoga, and we just did hot yoga the other day for the first time.
That's crazy.
I was in a full-on panic at least 5 times. This guy was teaching in class. He's 70 years old. I think his name was Ken or something like that. But he asked me at the end, he's like, how'd it go? And I said, man, I was in a full panic a couple of times. He said, I saw it on your face.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on the floor, and, my nervous system's saying, get the heck out of this room and go get a drink of water. And I'm sitting there, and I usually wear a watch, but I didn't have my watch on. And it's an hour long.
Every minute feels
so I'm like,
10.
yeah, so what's one? Then finally I looked over at Nick, felt like my head was in a vice. And I said, hey man, how much longer? He's like, oh, like 2 minutes. I was like, instantly the knowledge that there's going to be 2 minutes left, I was like, okay, I can do this.
Have you tried yoga
I can
yet?
see that mountain. I could get to
Yes. Yes, that's exactly it. Yes.
Have you tried yoga yet?
I've played around with some different poses. I can't say I've like taken a yoga class by any stretch of the imagination.
You need to.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
It's something I'd be really interested in because for 2 reasons. Because I'm interested in anything fitness. Maybe 3 reasons. I don't know. I won't count the reasons, but I'll just list them. So anything fitness, anything that can make me better. But also it's almost a little bit of a safe space because I know I won't be good at it, so I don't have to.
Yes.
I'll let my ego, and I try to let my ego go, but I'm a guy and I have ego.
Yeah.
So say if we're going to go lift or throw something or shoot something, there's a certain expertise level I hold myself to, and maybe that's ego, or maybe that's just I want to be good at stuff, or especially.
Or maybe you just know your capability.
Maybe, and then if I don't live up to that, then it
Right.
frustrates me. But I know I would probably be horrible at yoga, which is actually a really inviting thing, because if I'm really, really, really horrible is what I expect to be. So if I'm 1% better than that, I'm thrilled.
I lost 9 pounds in my first hot yoga class.
Oh, you did?
90 minutes, 9 pounds.
Yeah, 90 minutes sounds like
It was
considerably longer time than 1 hour.
So I did 60, and I'm like, oh, that it's like I was there. I was the same situation,
Panicking?
almost exactly. Dude, my heart rate, like I felt like my whole throat was beating. But you have those waves, those highs and lows.
Yeah.
So we're talking about just yoga or hot yoga?
Hot yoga for me.
But yoga it's challenging.
Yeah, so
challenging.
I thought 60 minutes was like, okay, I powered through it. I can take a 90, dude. That because she gave us breaks at 30 minutes and then in an hour. And then that second go around, you have to walk back into that 107 degree high humidity room. And you're out here, and like it was a day like today, like 55 degrees outside, perfect.
What am I doing?
9 pounds. I had never felt so disoriented and just completely ass kicked.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so I'll do that stuff, and then regular average everyday stuff. I have 3 dogs, so I'll snowshoe 2 or 3 miles a day in the wintertime, hike it 2 or 3 miles, 4 miles every day, just
Casually, 2-3
It's
miles
just the normal
snowshoe.
everyday stuff.
Yeah.
But it's huge. I was just in Denver, and I could not believe I went to an REI out there. That's a flagship store, I think. But got out there, and it was like the first time I'd seen snowshoes. In a store.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's just like I was talking to the guy about it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's crazy out here. People just go nuts for it."
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, is that preparation? Like we said, crossover training for the mountain, or is it just like, it sucks?
No, I mean, it's both. Like, I love snowshoeing. Love it. Throw them on. I'm at home, clip them in, put them on my boots, and just start trekking with the dogs. And it's where I walk them, it's a necessity. Certain, like this year, it was a necessity. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I'm just, post-holing the whole way, and it's just brutal. So I'll take them across the street from my house. There's a huge nature area, probably 200 or 300 acres. I'll take them for a big loop there. And then my neighbor has a big chunk of land with a big loop on it, and he doesn't have a house on it, so I'll take them on that big loop. And then I live on the St. Croix River, so I'll take them down this steep bluff, get on the ice of the river, walk a mile up the ice upstream, and then back up the bluff behind my house. And I call it the Super Deluxe. And if I even say the phrase Super Deluxe, my dogs will lose their mind because they know we're going on a long walk.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever snowshoed?
Yeah, I snowshoed a little bit in Leavenworth, Washington on a Beyond shoot.
Sweet.
So I got to snowshoe with Rudy Reyes. So that's something that many people would pay just to see Rudy juiced up on snowshoes.
That's cool. It's cool. It's a cool way to.
Do you feel like you're coming into your own? What are you, 42?
44.
I mean, we've talked about this a little bit. Bert said, he, as a younger guy, he's looking for friends and looking for community and that kind of stuff. But as you've gotten older, you're just confident in who you are and coming into your own. I mean, how much are you feeling of that, and how much are you guys feeling of that? Because I'm just a little bit behind you. I'm 37, so I feel like I'm getting there right now. But if I looked at 35, I'd say, man, I feel like I'm getting where I'm supposed to be going.
Yeah.
Is it that much different for you now than it was maybe 5-10 years ago?
I mean, I feel better all the time right now. Like, everything is trending better, but I am
trending better is a really good way to put it.
Yeah, trending better. I did get a little jealous today in where were we? What was the university?
South Carolina, University of South Carolina.
I'm trying to think of their name though. The
Gamecocks.
Yeah, saw that thing everywhere now. I can't remember it. But I was a little jealous today walking around there and seeing all these football players and the teammates and eating together and training together and going through all these things. I just thought, I actually said to Nick and Kyle as we were walking out of there, I wish I was a better high school athlete, or I wish I was a better form of myself back then to get propelled in that one direction. I don't know if these young men appreciate where they are or what they have at their fingertips. We're looking at all this Sorinex stuff that is just in this pristine, I mean, it looks like it's out of a movie, right? Just this pristine gym, and these guys have everything at their fingertips. I fear they have no idea where they are in life, and they think it's about.
I would have a hard time thinking they could. I've been in their position, I was at the same university, track and field, so really no one cared about us, but not football.
But still.
And still, we didn't realize what we had until years later. And I spoke to this South Carolina track team at one of their events, and I said, listen, I got basically up to a good amount of scholarship money to make a little steel ball go far away from my feet. Mm-hmm. That is such a contrived test. Mm-hmm. There is zero value for it in real life. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, this university allowed me to stay on campus, stay off campus, pay for this, let me see the country, let me develop my skills as an athlete and all these morals and skills and all this other stuff to make a little ball go far away from my feet, which really values no one. I said, so if you think that you running fast is something that the world really needs, you're on the best ride in the park right now.
Yeah.
And you don't even know it. And I hate that you don't know it, but I'm here to tell you, just realize that that's what's happening.
Try to grasp it
for just 2 seconds because it's just what it is.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are superstars that we saw today there.
Yeah, of course.
The second they either walk out of college, they are as average as you and I, which is fantastic. There's nothing wrong with that. And if they go to the NFL, they're going to be far below average, right? I would imagine, just being a rookie or whatever. And so, today I was just looking at everything that they had at their fingertips. And I mean, I had similar things at my fingertips had I recognized them, but not being a successful athlete or ultra smart, people weren't throwing academic scholarships at me. I wasn't getting athletic scholarships. So to me, I wasn't, that kind of special, if you will, so I had to chase the things on my own, which I didn't figure out for a long time. But now at 44, it just seems like every day we own our own companies, so the companies are growing,
Right.
which is fantastic. Checks come in the mail, and still every time a check comes in the mail, you're like, huh,
Yeah.
son of a gun.
Absolutely.
That's kind of neat.
It still works.
Yeah. And so that's really amazing. And then, of course, the places I get to go and the things that I get to do. And, it's been, if I die today, it's been a hell of a ride.
So what do you say to guys that are just out there pissed? Because I got a little bit of that from the powerlifting world that think, oh, you're only better than me because a company wants to work with you or a company wants to give you this product or this or that. What do you say to the guy or the woman out there that's looking at you and being like, I want to do what that guy does. I can't get there, so I hate him. That's a very real thing,
Sure.
especially in this social media driven world.
Sure.
I think your story is a little different than the expectation, right?
Yeah, I think you just have to chase what you want. And people always say you can do whatever you want, just put your mind to it. And I think that's true to a certain extent. I think what people are really trying to say is if you put your mind towards something and you bust your ass, you are going to get 200% further than if you just instantly commit in your mind that you weren't going to make it anyway. Right. If you say, I want to play in the NFL, like the worst guy on that team in South Carolina, the worst guy in that football team, he says, I want to freaking play in the NFL. And no one's even looking at him, no scouts, but he pours himself into the game plan, pours himself, I'll just say, also into his studies just to be a well-rounded individual, because I bet that helps their game.
Helps a ton.
Pours himself into the nutrition, pours himself into the training, hangs out with people or plays with people that are better football players than him and tries to learn from. I'll guarantee if he puts all of that stuff in the cake, all of that stuff in the recipe, he might not play for the NFL, but he's going to get damn close to doing it, and he's going to be a far better version of him than if he weren't. If he were just like, yeah, you're right, I'm 5'10", 190, I'm probably not going to play in the NFL. Right. Coach, you're probably right. I probably don't have to worry about it, but I think that's what people mean when they say you can do anything you want to put your mind to.
Sure.
But I think that's, people often ask me, how do I get a job in the outdoor space? How can I work in the hunting industry? I have no idea, other than I'll guarantee you if you are a talented individual and somebody that has a badass work ethic and you want to push yourself, you can find a job anywhere. Yeah. Anywhere. And working in the hunting industry, I don't hunt for a living.
Right.
That is, I pay for my hunts just like everyone else. And
this is what I want. Like, you pay for your stuff.
Absolutely. Pay
incredible.
Full price for my hunts. We pay full price for our cameras. We pay full price for our hunting gear. I get some stuff for free and things like that, but I'd rather not even engage in these relationships that are just kind of loosey-goosey trades.
Sure.
I'd rather either do business with a company, really offer value to each other and drive things forward and really have a game plan and do cool work, because it's fun to do that stuff. Yeah. Rather than just, I want a free bow, or I want free arrows, or I'll do this for you if you send me free backpacks, or I'll do this. No, that's not interesting to me at all. I'd rather just go and do this stuff on my own, tell my story or the story, celebrate the wildlife and the wilderness, and just do it the right way. And I think if you go at anything in that manner, you're going to be far better off. Your story's far more interesting than somebody telling you how to tell a story.
Well, you touched on that too before about Instagram, and or you tried to write this story or this article or whatever.
Yeah.
You're like, how can I impress these people?
Yeah.
The engagement I get when I am writing a post that I need to read myself usually gets far more traction, far more feedback, far more communication than when I'm saying, I'm standing on this mountaintop, what can I tell you that you're doing wrong or right? You know what I mean? And I think that people are just searching for a way to have some understanding of you. And if you're talking to yourself, somebody's going to connect to that point, right? That's very much the Sorinex story. I mean, we just connect with people because we're just guys. We're just people. We're just Sorinex, and we connect with people through that strength and conditioning stuff. But once you get behind the scenes of that, you see the stories. We have a lot of guys that were collegiate athletes. We have a lot of tie that binds. Problems are the tie that bind too, right?
Yes.
And is that what you're I guess what I'm asking is, when you're making this movie, how much of it is for your own, as we talked about, to tell your story, or is it to show other people that, hey, this is not the highlight reel. This is real. This is the hard stuff.
Well, it's both, right? I write it for me, but I've also caught myself, if I'm being fully transparent, in this latest film, The Other Side, I caught myself writing it for me, but I'm also writing it. Let me back up. Joe Rogan, I said this to him when we were on the podcast, and I really appreciate this. He said this, I think, in one of his stand-up routines. Kyle played it for me, where he was saying that we get shaped by outside influences. We all want to say, hey, I'm an individual. I do things my way. Nobody controls me. This is my ride. We like to say things like that, but really, as you do things that don't really work out for you, or you do things that do work out for you, you trend to start mimicking these things to kind of move yourself forward through success and chasing away from failures. And so in receiving letters from people, non-hunters and people that are against hunting, I'd hear their questions, and I didn't pick up on this until it was on the backside, but I was putting these things in my mind and not really actively thinking about it, but understanding, okay, people have questions about, why would you hunt bears? What can you eat bear meat? I thought you couldn't eat a predator. I thought bears were endangered. I thought bears were becoming extinct. I thought, all these notions of, are bears dangerous and this and that, and what is a grizzly bear? What's a black bear? What's a brown bear? What's a polar bear? And so I started writing my story, but including some of these elements that might help a child if they have a question, or your wife if she has a question, or your buddy that doesn't hunt that has a question, or somebody even better that is maybe against hunting and has a question. And now I get more letters from anti-hunters and non-hunters in support of what we're doing, and better questions from them saying, okay, so you answered, I had a question, you answered a little bit of it, but now that's led to this part of the question, this part of the question. So I'm writing them for myself, writing the story as it happened, because that's the most interesting way, because it's real. Anything else I'd have to fabricate. And whether I made a mistake, which is almost always, right? I make lots of mistakes, and the body of our work thus far is 3 films, and in all 3 films I've experienced a conscious and subconscious shot sequence breakdown called target panic. My mind has went into a panic at a heightened sensitivity in the final moments of shooting an animal, or even shooting targets. Like my mind was going through in kind of a mess. And
some people call it the yips.
The yips, yeah. 100%. And so I'm struggling with that, and struggling with a lot of different things, and struggling with a growing career, and struggling with, even sometimes being fully transparent, I'm in the wilderness, and I don't know how I'm going to pay for this hunt. Yeah. It's paid for on the front end, but I really don't know how I'm going to pay for my everything else after this. And I don't know how I'm going to pay for William, or how I'm going to pay for Kyle, or how I'm going to pay for, to keep our office lights on and to gas in my truck. And so, I'm sitting there on a mountain in Alaska in the pouring rain on day 15, and everyone thinks, oh, this is paradise. And I'm sitting there thinking about, I have no money. I have right now no story in my head other than that this feels miserable. It's not, but it feels miserable at the time. Yeah. And I'm not seeing any moose. So I used to think that everything was a 1-to-1 correlation. Go on a moose hunt, tell a story about moose. Go on a caribou hunt, do this. Well, now I'm realizing that the richness, the layers are of the life that I've lived, the place that I've gone, the things that I've done with the people that I've done them with, their story, my story, the earth, the people, everything. And so, it's just kind of, it's kind of evolved into my story, but also I'm taking in all these different elements to write pieces to help people answer questions, or to maybe even raise better questions.
Absolutely. I got a couple questions.
Yeah.
First, because we were on that, describe target panic and the experience of that, and what did you do, or did you rectify that? Because I've had target panic, and what I think from the sporting worlds, we'll just call it is choking.
Yeah.
I had many competitions that I should have done X, and I did Y. And there's times that I've hate to say, I've missed animals that I shouldn't have missed. I've hit animals wrong and I shouldn't have. It's joking, basically, from what I've seen.
Yeah, your mind is, your subconscious and your conscious mind are struggling. Essentially what it is, and there's way better people like Joel Turner, Shot IQ. He's a wizard at it. But basically, your mind can only do one thing at once. And so if you're thinking about this trigger pull back here, then you're not aiming. And so there's this idea of the critical second. When you come to full draw, whether you're shooting at a target or you're shooting at an animal, if we let this process, our minds want to be as efficient as possible. So when you come to full draw, you point at an animal, instantly your mind says, okay, there's the pin, put it on or near the animal, and the bow is still moving, and you're slapping the trigger. Or in the case of a rifle, you get that shock value. Your body doesn't want that recoil, that noise, that bow going off right next to your face. It's dangerous to us. Sure. So we push away from it. Like guys that shoot a gun, they're squeezing the trigger and they're closing their eyes and they're pushing the gun away. And that's all your body is trying to be really efficient and anticipate that movement, anticipate that shock. When you're shooting the bow, you're driving by, you're trying to anticipate that shot. Well, mine, and I've seen really bad versions of it, but mine was, everything was weighing on me. The cameras were weighing on me. The hunt was weighing on me. My inability to shoot this bow was weighing on me. And so I was doing what you guys are likely doing, is I was slapping the trigger and I was trying to time everything.
Yeah. Right.
I wasn't bearing the pin.
The target. And
that's right. And just trying to drive everything in sense. I went and got a hinge release. That's how I started out. And I now have some tension releases also, but I got a hinge release. And I started out 2 feet from the target, 3 feet from the target, and I would just come to full draw and put my pin on the target, or I even pulled my sight off for a little while, and I would just really honestly pull through with my system, and I'd aim, and I would just sit there and I'd say, pull, 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 and sometimes my bow wouldn't go off, and I'd click my safety back on because I was shooting a release called the Honey 2, and I'd let down, and I'd come to full draw again and clip my safety off, and I just pull, 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 pop. And it would just go off, scare the crap out of me.
Sure.
I had no idea when it's going to go off. And so, but as you do that, then you start realizing you just keep your circle, your pin floats in a circle when you're aiming, whether it be a high-powered rifle or the pin on your bow.
Right.
People, men particularly, they like to think that they hold it just dead still. That's impossible, right? There's small movements, and if you let your subconscious start to aim for you, no matter what, it'll always, like if you point at something and you're fixating on that, whether you want to or not, your finger will always come back to that spot that you want to shoot. And so then I started, as I got better and getting used to that, pretty soon that shock didn't scare me anymore. So I just sit there in the basement, just pull, 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 pop. The first few hundred arrows, like, whoo, my heart's beating out of my chest. But then it's like, pop.
So you're inducing stress, and then you're getting used to that stress induction, and you're
so then with a target,
inoculating yourself.
Yep, I can just come to full draw, put my pin on there, and just pull, pull. Now I don't even have to aim. I'm not even worried about where my arrow's going to go. I'm just keeping my circle as small as I can, pulling, pulling, pull, 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 pop. My arrow's in a bullseye. Knock another arrow, putting my pin right on that fletching if my arrow went in a good spot or whatever. And I'm just small circle, just pull, 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 pop. Oh, those arrows are touching. And then pretty soon it's like you realize that you're just aiming, and all of your business is back here. All of your business. You can only do one thing at once. So you might as well work on your shot sequence to get it perfect so that you're doing all of this with subconscious and you're aiming. And as you go through that, and then pretty soon your release starts happening. Same thing with a rifle, right? You're taking your deep breath. And you have your trigger buried in the middle part of your finger, right in that first crease, and again, your crosshairs are just this little circle, pop, and your gun goes off. And when you get used to that recoil, you get used to that noise, and just pop. And I told you last night I was shooting with Cody Vormans. He's a ex-Olympic rifleman. Him and I were shooting targets at 480 yards in Montana offhand, and just literally racking a bullet. And I'm not a talented rifleman at all, but just sitting there and just, and I can't keep the crosshair on the target. The target's too small at 480 yards, but I'm just keeping that crosshair just this little float, And it was cool because it's so far away that I was just sitting there just boom, and the gun would go off. I wasn't trying to shoot. I wasn't trying to time it when the circle was the smallest.
Gotcha.
I was just
to shrink your circle.
Yep. And just sitting there and just squeezing the trigger. Gun would go off, and then I'd look back at him, and he'd have this big shit-eating grin on his face because he could see my bullet hit through the scope already.
Right.
So I'd look back at him, he'd smile, and all of a sudden I'd hear ding.
Right.
You know, and so that's the target panic that I would go to. And like I saw you guys yesterday shooting with index fingers releases. I think you guys, as soon as you can, need to switch to a hinge or like John Dudley's Silverback or Carter's Evolution is basically John Dudley's Silverback as a 2-finger or 3-finger. And that is a pressure release. You set it up where the release is going to break at like 19 pounds.
Okay.
And so, or 27 pounds or whatever it is, it's based off your bow. So, and your draw weight. So you hold the safety and you come to full draw, you let the safety off, and then you just start pulling. Like you can't even, all you can do is keep doing your shot sequence perfect. Just pull, pop, and it will go off. And it's going to scare the crap out of you, but I'll guarantee you, if I gift it, I feel like an idiot. And I thought about this. I should have went and bought one of these releases for you guys. I hadn't watched you shoot yet, and literally handed them to you. And within a half a day of you guys shooting these releases, you'd be writing, like I'd be on the Christmas list for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's a huge party foul, Donnie.
Yeah.
you guys would fall in love with shooting your bow. I'm not saying you don't love it now. Yeah. You would fall in love with it.
Right. Well,
all of those arrows that you guys shot where you were a little low or a little right or a little left yesterday, all of that goes away right now.
Yeah.
Now it might still conjure itself up in a situation where like 10 guys are watching you, because now pretty soon your system falls apart, and that's where Joel comes in. That's what you guys need Tom Klum and Joel Turner to come out here to Sorinex Tactical, because that's what I was telling you yesterday. Like he's gonna get all your friends out there.
Sure.
He's gonna be like, oh, big tough Bert used to throw the shot put. Look at his big muscles, and he's gonna have you come to full draw, and then he's gonna go, Bert, hold on, Bert, let down. That's literally how you draw a bow? Be like, okay, everyone, how long you been shooting a bow? 10 years. Oh my God. Okay. All right. So we're going to watch Bert now. And then he sits there and he'll literally tap your face with an arrow and like rub the back and stick it in your ear, all while you're going through your sequence, all while 10 of your peers are watching you. And he wants you to break down.
Right.
Because over the next 2 days, he's going to teach you why none of that crap matters. And they film you doing it and you watch yourself break down. And then after 2 days, you'll start to employ all of his tactics and his critical second and watching it, keeping it, and pull, pop. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there, you're so busy with your job. Doesn't matter doesn't matter that everyone's watching you. Doesn't matter that he's sitting there sticking an arrow in your ear. You know, it's just like pull. And he was messing with me. He's sitting there, oh, it's Donnie Vincent, everyone. Oh my God, he's famous. Which I'm not, but he's saying this crap and he's touching me in my hair and I turned to him this last class and he said, I actually really enjoy this stuff. And he said, I know, just play along. And he's just sitting there messing with me. And because I like that pressure, like I'm always trying to convince myself that, you know, it's lying to yourself and trying to get yourself into that heightened awareness. And but you guys have to, absolutely. It's a must.
Thanks.
It's a must
I would love
it.
that.
Yeah.
My next and potentially last question.
Okay.
44-year-old Donnie Vincent. Life's going pretty well. Life keeps getting better.
Yep.
Your circle keeps getting smaller.
Yep. Oh, well said.
What do you tell the teenage Donnie Vincent if you had a chance to go back?
Oh, man. I was a mess. Super angry.
Really?
Yep. Super angry. No self-esteem whatsoever. No self-confidence. Brother and sister that are drug addicts. Parents that I had very little respect for. Still struggle with that today just because, you know, I'm fine, but they kind of left me out in the cold, right? They're like, you're fine. We can't even worry about you, you know? And I just wish I would have buckled down and believed in myself more. I didn't screw around too much when I was a kid. I did get in a few fist fights and got in some trouble there and did some things that I'm not proud of in heated situations where I just literally let my visceral temper get a hold of me. And to this day, I still struggle with that. To this day, I'm a pretty I don't want to say angry guy. I don't want to come across in that manner, but I have a lot of angst that lives in me. And so I just wish I would have found, this is going to sound contrived, and I'm not saying this because you guys are you. I wish I would have found nutrition earlier. I wish my parents were smart enough to know that, this is going to sound so stupid, but I wish they would have known that processed sugar is killing us. Mm-hmm. I wish my parents would have known that soda is just wiping you out, and that, I'm going to school with a body that's starving for actual food, and my pancreas and my insulin and everything is just out of whack with everything that I'm putting in my body. And I wish somebody would have taken me under their wing for training and said, these are the things that you can accomplish. And, and I'm responsible for all of this stuff. You can't wait for anyone to find you, right? You have to find yourself. Mm-hmm. You have to go and find these things, because unless, like I said in the beginning, unless you're a superstar, unless you're a star baseball player, football player, you're ultra smart, those are the only people that our parents and our coaches talk about. The coach did it today at South Carolina. He's Absolutely. Like, that guy's going to be a number 1 draft pick. That guy's there's 10 football players standing in the room. He talked about 3 guys. Well, those other 7 guys, they have to believe in themselves. They're the ones that are going to have to educate themselves. They're the ones that are going to have to push a little bit harder, which is fine, because they're going to want it more, and they're going to have more joy when they get there. Like, it's a shitstorm, and you gotta bring a gun to the fight, and so I just wish I would have believed more in myself, and stood up for myself a little bit more. I remember when I was in high school, I was put in remedial reading and remedial math every class. 10th grade, basic math. 11th grade, basic math. 12th grade, it was like, Donnie, you're in basic math. And wasn't even introduced to algebra. And I had wondered, these whiz kids that were in algebra or even calculus in high school, I just wondered about the things that they were talking about. I didn't even, they didn't even invite me to sit in on one of these classes. It's just, I must not have been very proficient in the standardized testing to where they're like, oh yeah, look at this cat, he's stuck over here. My parents were too ignorant or too stupid or didn't care enough. They were too worried about, my parents were going to things like DARE, like drugs, keeping kids off of drugs, because both my brother and sister were so messed up. They still are today. And so it's like they were so concerned with being loving parents. And my mother used to go to this thing called Tough Love. I don't know if you guys ever been in those organizations, but I just kind of scrapped all that and just said, you guys go and do that. But yeah, I wish I was, less angry, and I wish I would have just asked the teachers, hey, can one of you stay after and just show me some very, very basic algebra? I would just like to see how in the world does X stand for anything? How in the world can we solve for an unknown with a single variable that can be anything in the world? How is that? I thought all of math was numbers. So how in the world can X stand for something else? And had I had an understanding that now there's this unknown principle, and sometimes we have these complex equations that take in certain variables, whether we're estimating population or creating a curve in a road, it just would have been, I think that would have been fascinating for me to know some of the applications that this would have, stemmed from.
Were you just bored? I think, because, you're highly intelligent.
No, I wasn't bored. I was struggling, man.
Were you?
I was struggling. Same with college. I struggled all through college. I had to study my butt off, and I was at best a average student. The only thing that saved my butt with being a biologist was that they could drop me off in the wilderness for 5 months and not have to pick me up. Literally, the only reason I got jobs is say, hey, you live in this North Face tent for 5.5 months, and we'll come and get you in October. I said, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't that I was too dumb. It's just that, I'll live in this tent. I'm fascinated. This is awesome. This is incredible.
Right. Just toughness. And so, to paraphrase what you would tell yourself, would it be to be brave enough to find a mentor?
Mm-hmm. Mentor, a tutor. I would want to hang out with kids that were better than me, faster than me, smarter than me, stronger than me. I just think that's who you surround yourself with is so much these days. And even if you're going to be a loner, well, then you have to do a lot of intro work and really understand the things that you want to learn and the places you want to go. But I definitely think that having the right kind of mentor and having the right kind of influences around were. It's funny, when I was growing up, all my friends did drugs, all of them. And I never did any drugs. Never took a hit of a cigarette. Really? Never chewed. I've never tried pot. Nothing. Never. But all my friends did drugs. And it's funny because people like to talk about peer pressure. Well, I didn't do drugs so much that when I would be at a party, someone would be like, "Hey, you want some cocaine or something?" And I wouldn't even have to answer. My friends would be like, "No, he doesn't do drugs." And I just was unsure of where I was going, and so I just wanted to. My brain didn't feel strong when I was younger, and so I didn't want to compromise it by taking drugs or drinking.
Hamper it any more than you thought you were already behind.
I was so afraid of failure, and I didn't even know what failure was. I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career. I didn't look up to my parents at all. I didn't look up to any of my relatives. I didn't look up to any of my friends' parents. I just it was just kind of a free fall, and a day became a week, became a month, and that was that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, listen, you got a phone call, and this has been about an hour and a half of some really good stuff. So, Donnie, for me, I'll let you say yours too. Thanks so much for coming down. I know you're busy. We're all busy, but you got a lot of good stuff going on, man. So
I appreciate
thanks for taking time out of your all schedule and bringing more than yourself down. It says a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Quite a blessing in our life. I appreciate you making time and being here.
This has been awesome. I'm really looking forward to buying some of your equipment.
Well, hopefully it's not just a customer relationship, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm stoked about it, man. It's just been a very rewarding experience.
Good deal. Us too. Thanks, man.
Guys, that was Be Legendary, and all you got to do is go check this man out, and you'll see he defines it. Donnie Vincent, thank you very much.